Hello, everyone. Welcome back to What Magic Is This Podcast, a podcast about magic, the occult, the esoteric, the paranormal, the supernatural, and the weird. My name is Douglas Betchler, and we have a bit of a synchronicity episode. You see, most shows that I do on What Magic Is This are usually picked by poll within the Patreon that I have for my show. That is the What Magic Is This Patreon. And there's a lot of different topics on there, and I'm always surprised as to what gets picked more than other things. So what happened not too long ago is that a topic came up, and I was, in a way, just waiting for the time to get it set in motion. And then something strange happened. The person that I was going to talk to about this very particular specific topic reached out to me about a day before I was going to reach out to them. And that was just like, well, the starter pistol has been fired. We have to go with this one. And so today on What Magic Is This, we are going to be talking about something that is not so much within the Western tradition of magic and witchcraft, but that's okay, because it is such a fascinating and toothsome and amazing topic. And we are headed to the land of smiles, which is Thailand. And we're going to be talking about Thai magic. And today we have the perfect guest. My guest originally hails from Northern England. After visiting Thailand to see a friend in 1991, they felt a certain coming home feeling after having spent time there and returned many times after his initial visit. Lured by the curiosity of the myriad of spiritual and magical cultures there, he did everything within his power to make Thailand his forever home. Having achieved his goal in 2002, my guest has since written several books about Thailand, including the enormously successful and amazing The Thai Occult 1, as well as Thai Occult 2, Regions of Power. There is no better guest to talk to get an introduction on Thai magic today. Welcome to What Magic Is This? Peter Jenx. Peter, how are you?
I'm very good, actually, Douglas. And it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm sure today will be fun.
So what's the weather like there? What's happening? Is it hot? I just imagine it's you're where it looks like it's nice and sunny, so it looks like a lovely day where you are.
Well, it's rainy season, which is actually my favorite. Nice. I love the rainy season. It's generally quieter. It's lush. Everything just goes crazy and grows like mad, and I find it really peaceful. But in the north, we get more like we're higher up, so we get longer periods of rain. There's actually been less mad storms this year, and it's been all right. It was very dry, but it's kind of catching up with itself now. It rained for 36 hours a short while ago.
Oh, wow.
And so there's been terrible floods everywhere, but fortunately not here, But it's my favorite time of year. I love the peace of this time of year.
Fantastic.
And it makes you lazy. And lazy is good.
Lazy is indeed good. You're retired, are you not? You're kind of you're just enjoying yourself.
I've been semi-retired since about the age of 39.
Oh, well, hey, life goals. I'm about 2 years late, but someday we'll.
I'm what we call a gray area.
Okay.
My astrology, I have Rahu in my chart, and I work the best with things in between legality and illegality. And I've always done it. Like magic itself is in between legality and illegality, if you actually consider it, And it's just made for a very nice and interesting life, really. Done all sorts of different things,
You've lived a very interesting life. And as much as I would like to talk about all the crazy things that you've done, you're like, it's just to mention how it was that you were able to move to Thailand and all the things that you did. That's a whole podcast. It exists out there. I'll have a couple of links for people in the show notes, but we are here to talk to you today about Thai magic. And Peter was so wonderful that he gave me some copies of two of his books, and looking through these books, it's just it was just the most amazing thing. It made me want to go to Thailand. And I was saying to Peter before the microphone turned on, just that Thailand seems like such an amazingly magical occult place. It reminded me very much of when I would be in central Mexico, where everybody there was in some way doing some kind of magic. And it just, the magic leapt off the pages of these books. It just made me want to look into it more and more. And my goodness, I know that people are going to absolutely love this episode. So let's just dive right in here. Thailand seems to be a very unique spiritual environment. So how could you best describe it to folks who may be unfamiliar with Thai magic and Thai occult?
I think the first place we have to start is to understand that magic has always been here.
Okay.
So going back to what we said then about why I felt at home here, it actually feels very similar to the ancient places in the UK, and how the veil between the real, well, so-called real world and the spiritual world is extremely thin. Yeah. And because it's always been here, it is a part of everything, from building a house to getting married to having children. Everything, every single aspect of life has magic associated with it. And it has been an area that has absorbed every form of magic coming in. Now, the magic was already here before the Rusi arrived thousands of years back. And there was already everything here that they needed at that time. Yeah. But then when new stuff came, they would absorb that and start to work on that. So like with the Rusi, we believe that they brought the first forms of kata and imagery. And this has led to Thailand having a general awareness of spiritual influences. So, as you were saying about central Mexico, most people here have an interaction with what we would consider to be magic. And because of that, the attitude towards that magic is it just envelops everything. It envelops every part of life. You wake up in the morning and I go out and light incense on our house spirit shrine, land shrine. And it's all the actions associated with all the different parts of life are undertaken either with kind of the heartfelt intent or a just-in-case attitude. So it's like they are covering themselves almost to be able to live an easy life through the spiritual environment. And I think really, Burma is probably similar in some respects, but it's difficult to visit. We can't verify that at the moment. Cambodia used to have it.
Right.
But that's being kind of knocked away at the moment. And there actively has been cases of where they're killing magicians.
Jeez.
Thailand has kept it. The strength of culture here has meant that they can recognize the most ancient forms of magic that they work with. So like tiger magic is pre-Buddhist. They know all what is pre-Buddhist. Well, that automatically takes it back to more than 1,500 years ago. Candle magic is pre-everything. Tiger magic, they don't know how old it is, and it even has its own language. Ajarns, who is one of the great new crop of tiger magicians in this region, he talks to his cat in tiger language, and the cat does as it's told.
It's incredible.
So when you first visit, it takes time. You will start to see things and actions that we think might be associated with magic, but the door will only open with your correct attitude and some understanding so people feel like they can talk about it. And everybody will have a different reaction to it. They'll see things in a different way because of what they bring out of the culture at the same time. Because this culture can also act as a mirror to us, both magically and towards our character and everything else.
For sure. When one would do, say, a cursory look at the kind of religion or spirituality within Thailand, the thing that comes up immediately is that Thailand is Buddhist. Is that correct? Would you say that Thailand is predominantly a Buddhist country?
Yes.
Okay.
But that is not the whole story.
Okay.
Because as with all the influences, as they came in, things got layered over the top. And Buddhism is famous for not pushing out older beliefs. They were very accepting, and that's why also Buddhism spread, because it did not disturb the beliefs that the people already held. It just brought, it's the great philosophy that came about life itself and how we deal with life, what we can do to ease the burden on ourselves through life, how we can approach life and how to improve our happiness, really, and our understanding of life. So Buddhism here is the refuge for life. It is the great philosophy that forms the bedrock of life, and it is the guide to life. But magic and other forms of understanding fill the gaps that are not filled by Buddhism. Right. So magic fills the gap of necessity and desire, because life is more complex than a guide to life. Yeah, you're going to get things coming along that are going to create huge difficulties. You know, you might lose your farm, you might lose your partner, or some terrible things might come along. And then magic will come in to help the life of the person through the desire to get better. So there's two forms of understanding here, really. One is one is guided by the great philosophy itself, but then the other is guided by what we need from life as far as desire goes. Magic is about desire. Animism is about understanding the natural world and how it has an influence upon us. And all these together create the bedrock of the society.
Maybe you've just answered my question, but and this is a whole podcast. We've actually even talked about this a little bit through email. It's just like this little question is an entire 3-hour episode into itself. But historically, how did this spiritual environment come to be? Because there's even some Hindu elements within Thailand. Yeah. Just it's such a
There's Tibetan elements here.
Historically, what was going on and why Thailand?
Because it's a crossroads.
Okay.
It's the crossroads. Everything came from the West. There was magic already here. As influences came from the West, and first will have been we think the first was the Lursi, the original wandering ascetics from India. As all this came through, it all had an influence on the people, and what worked was kept. What was valued was kept, and it was kept because of the needs of the people and society itself. So it just shows a huge amount of open-heartedness and acceptance for the knowledge that comes, whereby they allow something else to come into the culture and influence them, and then they can develop that knowledge further. But we think that there are a few forms of magic that served the first societies, which are basic needs. Yeah, one, to find a mate.
Right.
So Sene magic, we call it sene, is an attribute for attraction, charm, to charm people. Sene is phenomenally important in life, as is charm. Because even today, the Thais understand the value of charm, because one meeting can change your life. So they will use charm magic, sene magic. Now, originally, that might have been a brightly coloured beetle's wing. Wow. And there will have been some form of blessing on it. It might have been a damsel, but it's something. There will have been a form of blessing given to it to help people find a good mate, to perpetuate society itself. We're also pretty sure that magic for war is ancient, because of conflict has been within human society since its beginning.
That's what we do, unfortunately.
Yeah, and we're still at it. We haven't learned anything yet, but we're a bit slow in that respect. So there will have been aspect of war magic, and war magic developed from that time. They will have had ways to work out the best ways to attack somebody, the best ways to enchant people, to make them kind of a bit vague, because that might give that amount of time to kill them. Yeah? And through war magic, we think that that is the likeliest source of necromancy, violent death. With young people, dying before your time produces highly charged remains, which are used often within the magic here when they can get them nowadays. So because of that, one of the earliest forms of magic would have been protection magic, Konkrapan, protect the body, enchant the body to make it impenetrable and avoid death, basically. And tiger magic is also that old, because wearing a tiger's tooth and learning how to enchant it shows that you killed that tiger. Right. And it is still a heavy part of magic today. And the greatest value in that is if they know the tooth came from a wild tiger. But that can only happen if it's an old tooth now. Right. Yeah, nobody wants to kill the tigers anymore. But some, like Ajahn Dewey, he has a few very old teeth, and you can tell the difference between the power of an old tiger tooth and a new one. And it's just because it was from nature and there was a wildness of power within it itself. So we think the original spiritual environment formed the bedrock of the magic scene today. And all these things came probably in waves at different times.
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of, and these are always my favorite places to look at and to study. It seems like a wonderful combination of syncreticism and pragmatism. It's just, if all of these different swirls and flourishes of different spiritual cultures, if something worked, they stuck with it and then they adapted on it. It's just amazing. One of the words that you just used, I'd like to hone in on, because you'll hear it quite often when Thai spirituality is brought up, is the word animism. So from your experience, could you say that Thailand is a truly animistic culture and society?
I would say that the animist thinking is still there.
Okay.
I'll give a couple of examples of that.
Definitely.
Remember the 13 boys who were trapped in the cave?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. The story behind that is remarkable. And we learned the story originally from Ajahn Nikom in Chiang Rai when we went to interview him during COVID times. And that whole process of the 13 boys getting out was phenomenal here. The whole country was heavily invested emotionally and spiritually trying to get those lads out. Yeah.
The whole world.
And because it was Englishmen who did it, people come and say, "Are you English?" I'm like, "Yeah." Well, these nutters who do caving for fun, made people cry in this country from happiness, and I shed tears myself with them. Such was the heavy burden that was experienced here. Now, Tham Luang is in a mountain that looks like, literally, when you're driving up on Highway 1 towards the northern border with Burma, it literally looks like a pregnant lady lying down.
Okay.
And from that, or from the legend, you don't know which starts it, came the story of Nang Non. And Nang Non, in legend, was a princess of an old king from way back who fell in love with the stable boy, ran away and hid in Tham Luang cave.
Okay. Oh.
And the stable boy used to go out and get food when they needed it. The king was enraged and he sent soldiers to find them, and they found the stable boy who would not tell them where Nang Non was, and they killed him. Nang Non waited for days and he didn't return, so she killed herself with a hat pin through her vein.
Oh.
Yeah, and died in that cave. So that cave has a resident spirit, and most caves in Thailand have resident spirits. Caves here are not places to mess about. There are some very heavy places, heavy caves here. And the local belief from that time was that the 13 boys were reincarnations of the 13 soldiers who went to try and find Nang Non.
Okay.
And she kept them there. The Navy SEAL, Kun Sam Nam, I hope I pronounced his name correctly, he was a very brave man. They believe that he was a reincarnation of the stable boy himself. So she kept him. Yeah. And there was an event during that terrible time where a very famous monk called Kruba Boon Chum went to visit the cave and said to the parents that the boys will get out, and this is at the worst time when everybody thought they were toast.
Right. Yeah.
He said the boys will get out and we might lose one person, maybe two. Yeah. And there was a lot of tears because Kruba went there. And so the one that she kept was the Thai Navy SEAL. And later, the captain of the football team actually committed suicide in the UK.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, a few years later.
Right.
So they look at it as in an animist mindset to fulfill the story. And the most remarkable thing was that once they got the last boy out, the pumps broke and everybody had to get out of there very quickly. And it was like Nang Non saying, "Okay, you're out. Get the fuck out now. I'm done with you."
Yeah.
And they kept it closed. You were allowed to go in a little way now, but not that far. But now they're actually saying, well, in the dry season, you're allowed to have a guide to go in a few hundred meters just to see how difficult it was.
Right.
But that is classic animist thinking in this country, whereby something is related to ghosts, the land, spirits, everything. Yeah. Now, updating that, yesterday we went to see our chef friend and have some lovely lunch. Fantastic cook. I love her to bits. And as I mentioned earlier about the floods, we're having political problems again. Mostly related to somebody who's basically running the country as a shadow, if you know what I mean, who comes from this region. And she immediately says, well, the floods are to wash that bugger away. The thinking shows itself quite often as an effect of nature against something of man, or to influence the effect of man.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, and it happens quite a lot.
Yeah.
It's quite a lot.
Would you say that most people in Thailand, because Thailand also has some very modern city, like in huge centers.
Bangkok's huge.
Yeah, huge centers of people. Would you say that even most folks in Bangkok would have this kind of a mindset, or is it?
It comes out accidentally.
Okay.
It's part of the culture.
Yeah.
They will not access it and say this is animist thinking.
Right.
This is so deep within the culture that it just appears.
Right.
Yeah? It just comes up. And when I've been here long enough now to be able to see it,
yeah,
and I find it remarkable as well that that still exists here, because this has been here forever. But the Thai culture is extremely strong, and it keeps their influences. And when we first heard that story from Ajahn in Chiang Rai, it was a wonderful Satyana Ajahn, we were just bowled over because it is such a fantastic example of animist thinking. And that story, if anybody should watch the rescue, the National Geographic documentary about the cave rescue. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant, and as true as it can be. There are other ones not as good. The National Geographic one is genius.
Perfect. It'll be in the show notes. So you can't have animism without spirits, they say. You've talked about it a bit already, but how are spirits interacted with, and what sort of behavior do Thai spirits display?
That's like saying, what sort of behavior does a society display?
Right.
Okay. So let's first of all discount the actions of ghosts, malicious ghosts.
Okay.
Yeah. And we'll go back to them maybe later. Sure. But there's a couple of ways of interacting through the magic. Okay. So the first one should be considered are the rituals held in a graveyard. Now, most ajarns in this region, the northern region, have a graveyard that they use, and within the graveyard, they will often have a small collection of ghosts that they like.
Okay.
As you do. Hey. Now, usually that will come about. I asked Ajahn Suh. Ajahn Suh is one of the best examples of this because he has a very old form of magic, Ajahn Suh. And he basically trained his ghosts with big offerings, pig's heads, lots of blood, raw meat, fruit, sugar, the lot, and got them and basically discovered a few ghosts that were good people in very unfortunate circumstances. And they will be there until the end of what would have been their natural lifespan. And then they will change. They will either move on or they will rise in the spiritual realm out of one of the levels of hell. Yeah? And he uses 2 or 3 of them to help his magic with rituals. Now, that ritual can either be for good fortune, for cursing, and they use ghosts to deliver the magic. Yeah. So, like with a curse, or with, say, something like Sane, again, going back to attraction, the ghost can help that person attract a lover that they are targeting. And that could take many forms because we don't know the source of thought. Thought itself can come from, we don't know if it comes from ourselves or outside forces or a ghost. Yeah. If you train yourself in time, I believe we can understand when it comes from a ghost, but you have to have quite a lot of experience of it. And he's trained his ghosts to be helpful, for which they get merit and an offering. Now, merit helps lift them in the spiritual realm. It's like having a bit of cash to throw around with your mates. Yeah? And it lifts them up. Okay, so that's one form of interaction with ghosts. And ajarn will generally know when it's worked because an image of, he understands when the ghost is going to do the job. He has enough experience to know if, when one doesn't do the job and just wants the offering, he discards them from that point and does it again. Yeah, he will know if it's a successful ritual, and sometimes he might have to do it once or twice or even three times to make it successful if it's a particularly difficult ritual. If it's a group ritual, it's actually much easier because the group of people they're trying to influence tend to increase the amount of magic going towards them. There's more desire involved.
Got it.
Yeah. So that's kind of one aspect of interacting with spirits. The next aspect of interacting with spirits is with amulets. Now, the Thais are quite famous for ghost amulets.
Yeah.
But there are different ways to use ghosts within an amulet. When we die, we lose our four elements. We lose our physical body, yeah? But that can actually be replaced, and the original spirit can be kept within an amulet. Okay. And it's about, they have a technique whereby they can rebuild the body of the original spirit of the remains that they have within a construction and keep their name, and it will respond to their name. Yeah. And for instance, this one that I'm wearing today, there's two ghosts in here, a mother and a child, and you can call them both, and they come because it's tied to my astrology. It's tied, we are tied together and we work together as part of a deal. Yeah. And that tends to be mostly in this region, mostly Lanna. Lanna is the original name for the kingdom of northern Thailand, and it means a million rice fields.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Lanna. Lan is a million, Na is one of the Na words. Your face can be Na as well for rice field. You can also use the same remains to create a new ghost.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah. So if you don't like the ghost that's in there, because not everybody is likable, that's the same with people, isn't it? You know?
Yeah.
Or if they're a bit kind of angry or bad-tempered, you can do a ritual called Bang Sakun Dai, is to move on the ghost that is present. And it's actually a ritual within undertaking. It's used a lot in undertaking here. And then replace the original spirit with a more pliable spirit that you've created yourself. Now, I've only heard of one other culture that can create spirits. And this one is created by a reversal, through reversing a Buddhist monk practice, whereby they dissolve the 32 parts of the body within themselves. And it's a meditation practice. Oh. Typical of the Thais, they then reverse that and use the set of a structure similar to it to create a body through the 32 parts of the body, through their own psyche and the remains that are present, the energy of the remains that are present within the amulet itself. That's another way to use ghosts, again, Thai spirits. There is a third way, which is where you remove all the ghosts and just keep the energy.
Okay. Well, okay.
Yeah. So that a very famous example of that would be with Luang Putin, who created some of the strongest and most famous amulets from child remains.
Mm.
But it's also the case when you have like sources, single sources of pry, which is a human remain, are now difficult to find.
Yeah.
Yeah. You've got to be in the countryside, away from the cities, with friends who are undertakers or body collectors. Yeah. And it's very under the table now. It's grey area.
I was gonna ask, what's the legality? We were talking about the legality of this.
Well, they went too far about 10 or 15 years ago.
Okay.
And it just got too much, the way they were collecting remains. And they have been clamping on it for the last 8 or 10 years.
Okay.
Yeah. We are careful about how we talk about this. I'm careful about how we describe this. But you have to remember also that all the remains used are through negotiation with the spirit itself. It has to be the case whereby the spirit has to acquiesce to their usage, and the payment is again through merit, which helps them in the afterworld. This is particularly important where it's child remains, because who would want to be a kid in hell? Yeah. And there are some incredible examples of what monks will do for children who have had terribly difficult deaths in this country. Yeah. So where you have a collection of materials you can't have 10 ghosts in an amulet.
No.
They're just going to, it's just not going to be a party that's going to get on well.
You can barely have 10 people in a room. I mean, it's
same thing. This all relates to society,
right.
Especially, and if you consider that most ghost amulets enjoy an offering of alcohol, it's not going to work out well if you have 10 of them in there. Yeah. So when that's the case, they move them all on, but the balance of power has to be such that it is a benefit to what you're creating. So there will be remains from all sorts of different sources, and they've all got different names, often the source, as in like the technical name for what it comes from. Like there's remains from a dead pregnant lady, children, accident victims. They've all got an individual name in Thai. And they will use a collection of them as a bedrock to the power within an amulet with no ghost. So that amulet can actually go on a deity altar, and they do that for things like the Indian gods. Okay. So the Indian gods are powered by the remains of the dead without the ghosts. It's just another supernatural material. So there's 3 ways that they can work with Thai spirits.
Wonderful. That is as in-depth an answer as one is going to get. Fantastic.
I was trying to make it kind of as concise as I could. It's really complicated. It is. And don't forget, this is just the story of it.
Right. The applications are just, because when you go through your books, Peter, the applications, you just see it come up over and over again, particularly if anybody is curious. The books are fantastic, but a lot of times there's interviews with specific individuals. And so you'll be reading something that you'll be reading something that has been referenced earlier. And it's like, wow, that is just a totally different way of utilization of this incredible magical concept. It's fantastic.
Everything has to be confirmed by a magician.
Yeah.
When I got into this, like 9 years ago now, I was aware of the fact that people were claiming things under their own recognizance, under their own knowledge. Right. They were not referencing the people it came from.
Yeah.
So they would get the information from an ajarn or a magician and then use it as if it is from themselves. That's when I knew I would end up writing books on this. And I went through a process to get them to trust me that I could stick to my word. Yeah, that took 2 books to do that. And then everybody was in on it because I proved, and I'm an older man, that helps. And I proved that I could do what I said I was going to do. The first book, which you don't see, thank Christ, is a red book with a gold skull on the cover. We only did limited number of copies, and it's what we thought we knew, because I thought that had to be done first.
Yes.
The second book was actually a very early version of the Sakyan book. And that's when we started interviewing ajarns, and it was printed as an interview.
Right.
This is what this expert says. Yeah. When they saw that, they also could see how it lifted their name.
Right.
Yeah. And they already had importance. It just expressed their importance within the culture. Then when we did Thai Occult 1, everybody was on board.
Amazing.
And I can go back and see and it changed everybody's lives as well. Because they, as I explained to them at the time, if we do this correctly, they become the expert of that representation of magic. Because that is all we can find that comes from the horse's mouth. Yeah, it comes from the magician themselves, and they can prove their lineage going back, and they can prove the age of them, the magic that they use, and reference it totally and who they learned it from.
For sure.
Now, that has had a greater effect, as big an effect as I hoped it would have, to be honest, because they deserve it. These guys are very special individuals that have studied literally all their lives. Ajahn Apichai, who I'm possibly the closest to now, he was a monk at 11, trying to lift up a body to collect corpse oil out of its neck.
11 years old?
At 11 years old. And he thought originally he thought the body would actually just sit up, because that's how it had appeared on a television series. This is like, it's on primetime television, right, as part of a long-running series about whatever, some family. Yeah. And he said, he was laughing. He said the undertaker had to hold the corpse up while he was using a candle under its chin to get the fat to make a naman prai oil. Wow. So when we talk about the depth of the culture here, it's on television, it's just everywhere, even though now they are actively trying to calm it down, keep some of it secret.
Okay.
But that action has been going on for at least 200 years, and they've not managed to do it yet. And we can say that categorically because of the versions of a story of the legend of Kumpen. The earliest ones go back to the 16th century. And that one's got baby roasting, killing his own spouse's spouse to get the baby out of her. It's got rituals in graveyards, fighting armies with ghosts, the lot. And it's an absolute fantastic source. It's the only source we have that proves the magic that existed then. And it proves it also because it was actually collected by princes. The versions of the stories were collected by princes within this royal family system. And then slowly over time, it became slightly more diluted, and they took out a lot of the baby roasting.
No doubt. Wow. You wrote that, I believe it was in one of the introductions to one of the books, that magic in Thailand is a smorgasbord.
Mm.
As much as possible, what are some of the most major concepts you feel are necessary for folks to understand about magic and its place in Thailand, because you've also referenced that, and I believe it was in one of your podcast interviews, you said that it's a complete system. So is this true?
Okay, so it's a smorgasbord because at a banquet, you can have a taste of everything.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
With the magic itself, the magicians themselves hold a very unusual place, a very unusual position within the magic, because they cannot seem to access the magic without being asked for it. It's like, I've said to them, what's your most unusual magic? And they just go blank. So they don't access it in that way. They don't view their knowledge in the same way as we would. It's like they have to open a cupboard and pull out a book in their mind when you ask for something in that book. So this means that the magic here is only bound by the desires of the people themselves, the desires of the community that accesses that particular magician, and the magician reacts to their needs. Okay? So when someone like me comes along with a completely different approach to life, we start to be able to understand a little more about the knowledge they keep and never use because they've never been asked the question. Yeah. Now, this is where the West is now starting to influence what is made. Because, as magic has opened, it started within Asia, Singapore, Taiwan, Vietnam, huge Malaysia. They were the first foreigners to start, people outside the country to start acquiring the magic. Yeah? But they only really wanted the magic that existed because that also served Asian societies. So it was all about money, attraction. That's it.
Like most
magic. Like that.
It's
what people need.
That's universal almost. Yeah.
It's what people needed then, but it's changing now. Yeah. Originally, it was all conquer pan invincibility and attraction and meta, wanting people to treat you kindly. Yeah. So with us coming, as in Western people, where I started asking questions a while ago about what can be done. And as yet, we have only found one thing that they couldn't do. And that was the magic of Chinnamaster. The imagery is just fabulous. She's got her head cut off and there's 3 spouts of blood coming out, going into the mouths of disciples.
Hardcore.
Yeah, it's just fabulous imagery. Yeah. And we think it might be here. We just haven't found it yet. But it's such an unusual form of magic that I don't think it is here. Although there was a very similar form of magic that we did find that I've never, ever seen made anywhere else from Pamukkala. Pamukkala was the left-hand man, a disciple of the Buddha, and it is about the acceptance of change. It's about the ability to become more fluid in life and be able to change. And that actually also includes being able to change from being alive to being dead. Yeah. So it's a very, very rare form of magic that only came about because I was investigating whether they had Chinnamaster magic. Okay. So then we have to look at what can be done with Thai occultism to produce something wholly Western. And I wanted to work out whether this could be worked out. And I asked Ajahn Apichai if he could make a Baphomet amulet.
Baffet amulet. Okay.
Yeah. And he sat there and he went, yeah.
Perfect.
Okay, let's do it. So we did it. Yeah. And we did it whereby I waited for people to tell me whether it worked. Okay. And even Gordon at Rune Soup said he's in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Baphomet is in that amulet. How did he do it? Yeah. So I asked Ajarn in the third book, in Thai Occult 3, which is about Ajarn Apicai, we get an insight into how he can create something not of his culture by using things wholly within his culture. This is really clever.
Yeah.
And when with certain questions, like people said, what does he look like? And Ajarn would just say, well, he flickers. He goes from male to female, changes his sexuality, is very fluid. Yeah. And because he did wait for the image of Baphomet to come to his mind when he was making these. Okay.
No prior knowledge of anything to do with
no prior, never studied any magic outside this land.
Yeah.
Okay. But within this land, within Thai magic, there is quite an extensive amount of wicha, which is knowledge, for demons. Yeah, and Rahu is a demon. Tawetsawan, who is one of the guards of the temple doors, demon. Yeah, there's lots of curly teeth demon.
Yeah.
So basically, what Ajarn did was use demon magic to create a Baphomet with human remains that he removed the ghost of. And they also have a way of adding an image to the created spirit. So he created the spirit of Baphomet within the amulet, and it looks like Baphomet because Ajarn designed the way it looks. Right. So this is where we're nowhere near understanding the full range of what they can do here.
Right. Yeah.
Because we're now exploring takruts. Takruts is just a rolled metal. It's a spell on a piece of metal blessed in a certain way. There's often stuff inside it to activate it and provide the power to power the takrut. And now we're asking for help with Western problems like insomnia. Too much at the moment, we're having to produce amulets that are, because people are having too much of a dream life because of the current astrology. It's stopping people sleeping. It's making them unsettled, and they are having thoughts of omens and uncomfortable stuff coming to the mind, which is just the astrology at this time. So I said, can you do something for that? And he said, yeah, we can do that. I said, what's the best way to present it? He said, tie it to them. So they even have a way to tie the magic to that specific person to make it work for them, but perhaps nobody else. And it's related to their astrology and how their astrology affects them. All this has just opened up as well. So we still do not know the extent of what they can do because it is so fluid, and depending on the view of the Ajarn, it's like a good chef. You can give them 15 different ingredients and they'll produce something you didn't expect.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. He even made, as a point of reference, 9 amulets to Lilith.
Well, why not?
And we did the 9 amulets to Lilith, and again, in a similarly clever way. And then we stopped because they were very well accepted, but it's not our job to produce magic that helps people understand things that they are studying from a different culture. It is our job to produce Thai magic that can be universally accepted from any culture. And one of the odd things at the moment is that some of the things we are making are going to some magicians in Africa.
Okay.
And we're developing a relationship with them. Lovely fellas, I must say, but quite powerful photographs of them. Yeah. I was like, God, I think I better behave with this guy, you know what I mean? So we still don't know the extent of this. We don't know the extent of what they can do. And it's really just about how they view the knowledge that they have and the scope of knowledge that they have.
Right.
And the lineages of knowledge that they have absorbed as to what they can actually construct. Yeah? Now, the second part of your question is about, is it a complete system?
Yeah.
As far as we can tell, yes. Now, magic has been lost, but generally it is only lost through the periodic geniuses that come along here with the magic that redevelop it and think of a better way to do it.
Okay.
Yeah. There is only one thing. There's some aspects of prime magic in Burma that ajarns is currently looking for, and everybody is looking for what's called the Witcher of a Sipung Payong camp, which was created by a very famous old monk called Kruba Wat Mai Hong on the western borders. Yeah? This is a Sipung, which is a balm that you use for sene or whatever else, but it was made by a ghost.
Oh, okay.
And it involved digging up a corpse. This is a long time ago. This is not modern stuff. And they had a very good-looking man, and they had a collection of herbs in a monk bowl, so there's a lot of stuff. And the man used the hand of the corpse to stir this mixture together while it was being enchanted by Kruba Wat Mai Hong. This went on for some time, I presume, because he's a Thai Yai monk, and the Thai Yai are famous for very long blessings, repetitions of kata like 500 times, things like that. And they knew it was ready when it felt like the corpse was stirring the mixture itself.
Yeah, wow.
Okay? Now, we've talked to Kruba Apiwat, who is a lineage descendant with the knowledge of Kruba Wat Mai Hong, and he laughs and he said, we don't have that Witcher written down. We don't know if it's true. We would have to try and replicate it and see what happened. Yeah? But the principle of making a Sipung Payong Kam can be adapted by modern magicians. And we made one.
Oh, okay.
When I say we, I said because I'm associated with Ajarn Dewey. And Ajarn Dewey made a Sipung in his graveyard, which is a particularly wild graveyard. It's insane. It's insanely haunted. It's a very powerful location. And he made it in the cremation pit at the best astrological time. And he had the guardian of the graveyard go through him to bless the Sipung. It's very close to the guardian of the graveyard there. And he also uses that guardian to bless tattoos that he makes in the graveyard.
Right.
So the principle behind Sipung Payong Kam can, with a smart and able magician, can be used to create pretty much, I presume, pretty much anything. It's just within the scope of your imagination.
Right. Wow, that's incredible. You used two words there, Taiye. I might be
Taiye. The Taiye are one of the tribe people.
So let's talk about that, because magic seems to be extremely regional in Thailand. Indeed, one of the subtitles of your books is Regions of Power. Are there a few forms of magic which are more prominent than others? Are you able to take us through a couple of the regions?
Okay. You could actually do the magic of every city in this country.
Okay.
And it'd be different.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's just insane. Lanao Lands, which is where I live, the Thai Occult One, the big book, is predominantly 80-85% Lanao. Yeah. Famous for working with ghosts and candle magic.
Okay.
The candle magic here is just phenomenal. The volume of it is beyond human thinking. Most of it is so old, they don't actually understand the construction of the spell, but it still works with the correct blessing.
Okay.
Yeah. Some of it uses languages and scripts we no longer understand. It's that old.
Jeez.
And there is candle magic for literally everything.
Cool.
Everything. We did some yesterday. I had Ajarn do some for a client yesterday, which was called Sun Kwam. Sun Kwam, and it's a collection of candle magic for different purposes. It's a bit like a curse, but not.
Okay.
It's actually based from, because nobody likes to do curses. The ajarns don't really like to do curses because of the possible karmic backlash.
Okay.
If they go a bit heavy and kill somebody, which has happened, although I can't really talk about it.
Ask.
Well, I don't want any of the ajarns to think that they might have killed somebody and don't know about it.
Right.
Yeah? It's not a good thing. So instead of doing that nowadays, we're doing Sun Kwam magic. And this one was brought by somebody who has been having problems at work where everybody was ganging up on him. You know how people can turn. It's fucking ugly, isn't it? It can get appalling group attitudes in that respect. What Sun Kwam magic does in this particular version of it, you can either have it directed at one person, so it can be used in court cases quite often, or do a general Sun Kwam around that person. And what happens is that it makes the people causing the trouble cause their own downfall. So it allows the person who has been victimized to a certain extent. I just say to them, sit and watch. Don't react to anything from this point. Watch. And they do something. They just go too far one day and it creates their own downfall. Yeah. Candle magic can literally be used. You think of something and there's candle magic for it. It can be used for unruly land spirits. It can be used for blessing houses, anything. I send candles all over the world where people can burn them at home for specific purposes. Yeah. The Taiye and the Lana are like brothers. The Taiye are the Shan people, but we call them Taiye. You might know them as the Shan if you know about the different peoples of this area. Taiye have not got their own land, so they occupy an area between this region and Burma. So Burmese magic and Taiye magic is heavily intertwined. And the Taiye are renowned for their blessings, the extent of their blessings, their particular use of mercury in magic, and what's called ya. A ya is a herbal mixture, and everybody holds them in a very special place because of the way they use herbs. Going back to Kruba Apiwat, He collects his own. He will go walking in the mountains and collect herbs. He will spot certain plants and come back for them. He will know other plants when they are going to flower and come back and say kata to help the flower open. There are specific ways to collect these plants. There are specific ways to cut them. Some plants you can't let your shadow fall upon them before you pick them. Some plants you have to take your shoes off and creep up on them. Some plants require you to say a kata so they don't harm you. The knowledge is just ridiculous. And the way they combine them to create a mixture, which is often in little pyramids or like square, elongated square shapes. And they can be used for 100 years. You need tiny amounts of this stuff to make it work, especially with the old stuff. And the Thai are the experts for it. They are also the experts at collecting mercury, natural mercury from nature, which has got considerably more supernatural power to it than produced mercury, refined mercury. See, it's a different color as well. It's more like a cloudy silver than sharply reflective. Okay. And they have ways to collect it through using rotten meat and in certain places, and they bury it and come back. And there might be a film of natural mercury on the top of it, which has to be refined over months and months of actions to remove the poisons and to bless it. And we did a long interview with Kruba Apirat about this. It's the first one ever done in the English language about how he collects mercury. It's just such a beautifully intelligent man. I've got so much respect for him. And good sense of humor as well, because at the end he said, well, of course, we can also they use meat, usually pork, to rot, to attract mercury. Mercury likes rotten meat. It comes to it. It feeds on it. And he said, well, of course, we can use human meat for the same job. He said, but the mercury just becomes a bit too explosive.
Nice.
I was rolling around laughing at that one. And he just dropped it in at the end of the interview, you know. And when we finished, I said, Kruba, if you ever get the chance to do a mercury using human meat, would you let me know, please? He said it's too difficult. They collect it in graveyards. He said, and it literally can blow up while you're actually working with it. It's too energetic. Now, then, going around the regions was very interesting. We did all this during COVID. We tried to do Isan, but they all wanted money to do an interview, which is not how I work. We managed to do some about some of the very heavy human remains that are collected in certain very dark forms of magic there. Let's leave that one on this interview. Sure. And we also managed to interview a Nora ajarn. And the Nora are fascinating and also veiled. The knowledge is veiled from the common understanding. The Nora we interviewed about was because of the ancestors of the southern people. And many people in the south have Nora ancestors. They will have had somebody who is part of the understanding of their ancestral lineage. And a lot of families will have a ceremony every few years involving a Nora ajarn that will help the family be settled and not upset their ancestors. Now, I think that is something that needs investigating more fully, not by me, but it needs to be looked at because of the way they work with the ancestors could be of great use in reinvigorating the magic in other parts of the world. Yeah. Strangely, when these things arise, sometimes other events happen or come forward that opens another door to that knowledge. And after producing Thai Occult 2, which is one of my favorites, perhaps my favorite book, because it's just so meaty, it's so direct, and you can really get your teeth into it. Somebody came forward that needed help with a spiritual problem. And in these cases, we always start with ajarns, because he's only half in this world. He's got another foot in another world. Yeah. And in the morning, he had ajarns some time ago, he had a massive brain hemorrhage, which means it's very difficult to use one side of his body. But because of it, he has become extremely psychic. It opens something within him. And in the mornings, he'll only do it for one person a day, and only in the morning, he will hold somebody's hand and be able to help them spiritually and check them, what's going on. And we had a friend come, and she'd had problems for a very long time, and she was married to a man from the south that she didn't even like. She never even found him attractive, and ended up getting married to him, which is strange in itself. Yeah. And she always considered that there was magic at work. And Ajarn held her hand and said, it's a Nora curse. Now, I didn't even know the Nora had a curses. He said they do this with the tears of a sea cow, that they stop going back into the water so it cries from the heat. It's a heavy, heavy animist magic that I do not understand at all. And he said, I've had one example of this before, and he had to do some ceremonies and rituals to get it out. And she has to come back every 2 or 3 years, because he described it as being like a drawing in pencil on paper. You can keep rubbing it out, but you can always see the indent on the paper. Yeah?
Nice.
And so therefore, every 2 or 3 years, he says, come back and we'll just keep taking it away. So because these things never fully leave, And she's coming back actually in November this year. And she hates Ajarn, though, because he keeps making her drink glasses of sesame oil while having certain style of spiritual bath. And he did a way to cast the curse out involving spikes wrapped in her hair that was stuck into a bowl of dry rice. Ajarn's magic is incredibly old.
Yeah.
Ajarn's magic. And he did that to be able to reconstruct her physical body away from the effects of the curse. Yeah. So whenever we enter any of the knowledges, any of the realms of knowledge, and this is the case with all the books, other examples, it's like the knowledge comes forward itself to give another example of its effect or what it can do.
For sure. Wow. That's wonderful. Thank you for taking us through some of the regions, just a nice little sampling of them.
Well, we just, how far can you take these things? You could do it by each particular state sort of thing, or, district, but we just kind of lumped it as much as we could. Otherwise, it'd be a job that would never finish.
Right. For sure.
You'd be at it forever. And there's only so much knowledge that we will be given.
Right.
And you have to understand the level of knowledge that they can give you, because of the restrictions of not being able to pass on certain knowledge to people who are not actively studying with them. And I would always say to them, we only need the story. We don't need the way. And once or twice, not more than once or twice in this process, I have actually stopped them. Okay, stop. We don't need to know that. That will stop talking about it. It's too far. We were being told the way going back a little bit, we were told the way that they produce the 32 parts of the body to create a spirit. And when they started, I interrupted. I said, we don't want it on tape. It's too much. That's for Luke's. It's not, you will hurt your magic if we put that in a book.
Nice.
Because everybody will think they can do it.
Right.
And everybody thinking they can do something hurts the magic. Yeah. It will damage it. So the Ajarn understood I wasn't being rude, but there has to be limits to what we can tell people. Otherwise, it will damage the magic itself.
Fantastic. This is probably a question that I should have asked a little bit earlier on in the episode. What is an ajarn and how do they train? What is their relationship to monks? Or do most ajarns start as monks? So I guess this is a three-part question.
Okay. So first thing we have to understand is that the refuge of safety is Buddhism. Yeah. Buddhism provides kind of the barrier, the protective barrier, and the divine and the goodness to keep us safe. So they all refer to it as the refuge, yeah, the place that protects you. And we have to remember that when Buddhism came here, everything about Buddhism was considered to be sacred, which immediately puts it within the realms of magic. Yeah. So even the written word, the written Pali, the language itself, the speaking of that language was considered to be profound magic when it first arrived. So that led, I'm already digressing. So that led to the fact that there are techniques within Buddhism to produce supernatural materials through the writing of Buddhist magic. Yes, and they've all got names, they've all got purposes, and it's incredibly complex processes. And some magicians make a living because of their ability to produce handmade powders. It's very complex. So Buddhism within the hierarchy of magic is the pinnacle. It's the white, what we consider to be white, but in effect, all magic is grey because the Buddha rejected magic.
That's right. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So in Thailand, there's no such thing really as white magic. There's no such thing as white magic anywhere. You either use ghosts or you don't.
Right.
Basically. Or you're either kind of doing offensive magic and dangerous magic, or you have the correct level of refuge. And the Ajarns are incredibly careful with how far they go because ghosts can kill you here. There are a few famous examples of pretty famous Ajarns dying from ghosts. So often an Ajarn, which is a lay magician, Ajarn means teacher, but it also means much more than that. The Thai language is phenomenally difficult. It's a lay magician. And magic really here at this level is predominantly only available to men because most Ajarns, especially in the north, will have a period of being a monk to gain the monk ability to have magic within. Yeah. And it's a very important aspect and most of the ajarns up here choose whether they have the word nan in their title. Like Ajahn Dang, who is a 30-year practitioner and master of Sakyan, he's often known as Ajahn Nandang because he was a monk for 17 years. 17 years of monk practice, giving to the society from himself to create merit and learn before he became an Ajahn. 17 years. He's a beautiful man, is Ajahn Dang.
Wow.
Everybody adores Ajahn Dang. If you don't like Ajahn Dang, there's something seriously wrong with you. Fantastic, beautiful. So, the Ajarns will, first of all, usually learn with another Ajarn, a Kruba Ajarn, a teacher Ajarn, and they will be taken on by them if they think they are of good character, and that can be checked within their astrology. Actually, they will be able to see their character because people can lie, but your astrology doesn't.
Facts.
Yeah? And there's also Thai astrology has been developed to be able to do many things that answer questions that are posed within society, and magic is part of society. So they can come out with many answers that have seemed strange to be able to access. Yeah. The teaching process normally starts with the script, normally involves the learning of all the kata, and usually an introduction through the magic that the student is really interested in, because it kind of generates the process.
Yeah.
At these points, they will be guided depending on the level of what we call samadhi, which is their state of focus, and given various different practices to enhance that, because that relates to their level of ability.
Okay.
Yeah. And the Ajarns really never stop learning. There was always something to learn. And they will often go to different famous masters to learn different aspects. And even people like Ajahn Subin, who is, top of the tree,
Okay.
This guy. Absolute genius with magic. Even he now studies different regional forms of magic. Once he feels that he has completely embodied them, he is going to study magic in the West.
Nice.
How interesting would that be?
Oh man, how old is this?
Ajahn Subin, I think he's 40, 42.
Oh, wow.
He was a monk at the age of 8.
The age of 8. Wow.
And he is a magician returned because he learned the scripts.
Just simply, just easily.
Like that. He already knew them.
Yeah.
It was like reconfirming what he knew.
Incredible.
So he is considered, a lot of the Ajarns are actually magicians returned. I'm convinced Ajahn Apichai is a magician returned as well.
Yeah.
He knows too much. He remembers it too easily. His abilities are beyond his years. Yeah. And even though we know each other very well, we've worked together for a long time now. I still can't fathom what's in there.
Right. There's a word that you used earlier, samadhi. How does one conceptualize the importance of samadhi to ajarns and even to monks, perhaps?
If we cannot, 1 minute.
It's all good. I had to wake Peter up to do this interview because he's about 14 hours into the future, and the only time I would
I'm your future, mate.
That's right. The only time that we could coordinate is bright and early in the morning. So he's having breakfast. I'm still digesting dinner, and so
this is actually second breakfast. The cat woke me up at 3.
Oh, nice. The cat woke you up. My goodness.
Cats like 3 o'clock.
They do. They love the night. That's for sure.
It's their favorite time. So, if we are going to be sensitive to anything in life, we have to have the ability to be nothing. If we are bothered by thoughts or our mind, how on earth can you feel anything? I generally believe that the way we think about working with ghosts is not necessarily correct.
Okay.
Even these guys, some people pretend that they sit there talking to ghosts. Man, you're just going to look insane. Yeah, and there's been a definite race for people to try and express their abilities to levels that are beyond reality. Because even these guys are not going to sit there talking to a ghost. It's a ghost.
Right.
Yeah, be above it. You're living, they are dead. They are there to help you and you will help them in return. It's business. Mm-hmm. Yeah? You don't want ghosts interfering with your life. And the only way we can understand the transmitting of energy to anything is by having the ability to be nothing. And the ability to eventually not even have a body. So you can feel everything. Samadhi is the state of focus that helps you produce magic because it is the state of nothingness. And there's many, many ways to produce samadhi. Normally, a teacher will give you the best practice for you, depending on your state of mind and what you are studying, because different things, everybody needs different work. Everybody needs a different concept of samadhi or nothing to be able to understand what you are putting into any construction or what magic you are creating. If you have a busy mind, you are not going to create anything except busyness.
Right.
And your energy is flying all over the place. Yeah. So it's just about both physical and mental stillness. The most obvious way to do that is through breathing techniques, meditation.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But there's more than that, Yoga produces samadhi. You can't think while playing a musical instrument.
Correct. Yeah.
Samadhi. So everybody understands what we need and what qualifies as samadhi, because samadhi is essential in the production of magic. Nice. Another example of that is when working with the elements. There are ways to feel and pass on the elements into amulets. Because the elements, Ajahn Apichai spent 10 years trying to find someone to teach him a particular lineage magic because of the way they use the elements. It's extremely unusual. Okay. And this also includes the non-element, because there are 5 elements, not 4. One of them is nothing.
Right.
Yeah. And which he describes as sitting on still air. Now, monks, another important thing with this about being a monk for a period of time is that there are monk practices to basically let your body go. And this is why high monks appear only to be half here. Mm-hmm. I've been fortunate enough to see some high monks, and their image flickers. You can't focus on some of them, and some of the levels of kata, levels of chanting are just breathtaking. But these guys are very, very, very difficult to find. Huh. They live within a spiritual world. But there's been a couple of occasions where I've just been sat in awe at the way somebody is moving, because I'm quite still. I can say things without thinking. Yeah, I don't think of what I'm saying half the time, which probably shows. But
likewise,
you have to allow things to come out. And when you see high spiritual people, it can be breathtaking as to the level of not being here.
Yeah.
Samadhi. These are levels of samadhi that we cannot understand because we are not there.
There's an article that I will also have in the show notes that was written by Peter that everybody can read, that goes in a little bit further on samadhi. I highly recommend, because if you're coming at this from only a Western context, there are things that Peter has written in there that would be like, I know exactly what this is. Well, not exactly. I know what
we have to have an idea, don't we?
Yeah, we have an idea, certainly. This is one thing. My only, besides listening to your podcast episodes, my only familiarity with Thai magic came from doing a Patreon episode last year about spirit houses. And while spirit houses are not entirely specific to Thailand, there are spirit houses in Cambodia, there are spirit houses in Vietnam, plenty of places. I found the expression of the many, many ways in which spirit houses were utilized in Thailand to just be one of the most incredible things that I still have part of it in my practice to this day. But if you ask anyone who has been to Thailand for even a short while, they will talk about these usually very elaborate small shrines that are everywhere. These are the spirit houses. So it seems that there are many different types and many different names. When I did research for my episode, it seemed like every book I went to and every website I went to had different names for different, and to try and find agreements was impossible. We could do a whole episode about spirit houses. We very well might at some point. I have to ask you, Peter, what are the major reasons for putting up a spirit house, and how do they serve those who have them?
Well, we built this house I'm sat in. We had it built, and we had to construct a spirit house because I just thought, I like spirit houses. They're great. I nearly did a photographic book of spirit houses once.
I would love that.
But I had to stop. They're too wild.
They're so great. I love them. I can stare at them all day. I just think
they're not something to be taken lightly, a spirit house.
Okay.
I was going around to places, and while I always ask with my mind whether I can take a photograph, I still got the impression it was not a good idea to be doing this. These are focal points of power that are there to control land spirits, in effect. So when we built ours, I thought, well, this is quite good because I can photograph the whole process. And we had the ajarns again come to do this. And we're building somewhere else shortly, and he'll do that as well. And we had to design the spirit house. We could have a chance to design it. We didn't have to buy one from a shop. So my partner Bond designed one that's actually in keeping with the design of the house.
Okay.
But the contents of the spirit house, the shop's selling all these things, and you can go and buy the things that you need to put within the spirit house. So first of all, we needed to know what type of spirit house it was going to be.
Right.
Because there are, in effect, two types. Unless you're going to be doing very large business buildings and things like that, and there's a third and fourth type. But they're so high, you'll never have the experience of building one or being present while one is being consecrated. Ours, first of all, has to have grandmother, grandfather figures, because people have died on this land. Yeah, so even though it had not been used for a long time, Ajarns said people have died on this land, so you need grandmother, grandfather, which is the idea of ancestral lineage, ancestral magic, and like the ancient ancestors who lived on this land when people first came here. On top of that, we have a deity in it, and the deity for us is related to Brahma. Some deities are related to Indra, Pratin. Pratin is generally one of the deities that's called down to control the land spirits. And there is usually a little structure with 4 offerings in the north, south, east, west, with offerings to each direction, because each direction has an ogre that protects that direction. A spirit house has to face east, north, or anywhere in between. Yeah? Ours faces north because it was the easiest direction. Otherwise, it would be looking at the house. Yeah, so you have to be aware of all these things. And the position has to be decided upon by the person who's going to consecrate spirit house in general. The contents of the spirit house itself has to be decided on by the people who are going to live in the house or own the house. So there are male and female figures within it. You have to decide on the animals you want, the colour of the water pots, and it always has to have water there because it's a living entity. There is a spirit residing in that place, and all spirits need water. Don't let it run dry. This is the case with amulets as well. If you're going away, put a sealed bottle of water on there and let the thing know you're going away, and you'll be back and to take care of the place while you return. Yeah? Thai friends who visit here and are going to stay overnight always go to my spirit house, our spirit house, light incense and introduce themselves.
As they should.
It's like introducing yourself to the guard dog.
That's right. That's right.
And they can be used in that way. Under this particular spirit house is a takrut, a handwritten spell by a Ajarn to embody the land spirit protector, the guardian of this land, under the spirit house that you can then praise with 5 incense every morning, offerings. There'll always be water there, and an offering, say, of cooked rice or fruit once a week is enough. Yeah. And Qatar every day. And the consecration took quite a while. There's a period, and the offerings were extensive, and the offerings afterwards could be eaten except by anybody who's covered in Satyan tattoos.
Covered in tattoos, really?
Yeah, you could Satyan tattoos, magical tattoos.
Oh, okay,
yeah?
got it. Okay.
You can't eat offerings to a spirit house, but you can give them to neighbours and people without Satyan. Otherwise, the spirit can find a way into you through the tattoo. Yeah, which sounds like fun. That's just one of the Lana ways. There are many ways to consecrate a spirit house. And there are many levels of spirit house because, in effect, they are all connected. So the spirit house in our house has a connection with the main spirit house within this village, which has a connection to the city pillar within Chiang Mai. Okay. Wow. So it's like a network, which we didn't understand at that point. And the city pillar in Chiang Mai is a very old one, to the point where actually they don't allow ladies in. They don't allow ladies to go in because it's of an age where the magic can be affected by period blood.
Okay.
So, you can't really ask ladies to check. What do you do? I check period blood, mate. You can't be doing that. So you just have to say, I'm very sorry, ladies cannot enter, because it will affect the magic of that particular pillar. And those pillars have people underneath, dead bodies underneath, and they kill them to act as the protector of the city. Yeah, that's another long story. But in effect, it's like a network of smaller shrines relying on bigger shrines, which relies on the biggest shrine, which is in Bangkok.
That is incredible. It's so fascinating to me. And I love every aspect of what goes into creation, the offerings, the residents. It's exactly my cup of tea, and it's just so fascinating to me.
Now, quick warning: people buy little spirit houses and take them home.
Right.
Please don't do it.
Yeah,
because you can have wandering ghosts living in them.
Yeah,
the land we bought opposite had an old spirit house, and it was obvious even to me that it had never been blessed. So ajarns had to come, carve letters and magic into the spirit house so he could move it, and give an offering that had to go with it to move it to a temple that accepted old spirit houses, where the wandering ghost within would not cause a problem. Okay. Yeah. That can happen if you just put a spirit house up willy-nilly because it looks nice in your garden.
Right.
If people want to do it, it can be done. There's candles that can be sent anywhere whereby it will help control the land spirits and provide a focal point for the land spirits to reside. And if anybody has a problem from land spirits, there's also candles for that, which the ajarns are very happy to do because it's a good merit.
Yes.
To stop people being hurt by land spirits. I am of the belief that a lot of the more violent areas in the world are violent primarily because they've lost contact with the land spirits. And land spirits can be phenomenally difficult and violent. A lot of effort here is made to placate the land. And this is also the case in caves. They placate them and try and keep the negative entities that live in there instead of them wandering around being a bit of a pain in the ass. This is to the point where some problem caves have actually got temples built on top of them, above them, on the mountain that the caves reside on, to control the entities within that cave.
Very cool. Have you ever heard of the Oakland Buddha?
No. Please share.
So there was this small little patch of land on the corner of a street in Oakland, and one of the people in the neighborhood put up a shrine to a Buddha. And very shortly after installing it, I think they put it there to prevent people from dumping garbage.
Okay.
Then eventually people started leaving candles. They started leaving offerings. Crime plummeted in that neighborhood. It just completely fell off the radar. It's just one of those things. I think you're absolutely right. I think this idea that we have of falling out of touch with, specifically with land spirits, is something that needs rectified.
Desperate.
Everywhere.
And it needs
everywhere.
It needs moving into all the different forms of magic as well. Everywhere has Thai Buddhist monks and Thai temples now. Every major city, Get them, ask at the temple to see whether they can come and bless a land and bless a spirit altar, a land spirit altar, and have a candle made, even if they cannot consecrate the altar and the spirit within the altar themselves, which is a very skilled process, they can bless the land. And sending a candle will help consecrate the spirit house that you can then take care of. We have to get used to these feelings as well that these things can produce, that these things offer us. All this is about having the understanding of our feelings and what land should feel like, whether something is right or wrong, and this is all part of the path towards having a better existence and familiarity with the nature and the natural state that we're meant to be living in.
Hear, hear. Entirely agree. Something that you teased a little bit earlier that we have to talk about are ghosts. So let's talk about the ones that are, from our eyes at least, not so nice. What role do these, I hate to use the word malevolent, but we'll just use it anyways. What role did the more bothersome ghosts in Thailand, how do they play in with folklore and in with the magic there?
Every Thai person has got a version of various famous ghost stories. Ghost stories form one of the foundations of the society here, almost. There are ghost stories, there are legends about ghosts, certain ghosts. There is a myriad of different types of ghosts, each of which will have a legend associated with them. And it's just one of the pillars of the culture itself. If certain ghosts can be very powerful and extremely malevolent, and we have the TV industry and the film industry here, its foundation is on ghost stories. There's just so many of them, to the point where some of them have actually been adapted for the West and all that stuff. A film called Shutter, I think, was remade about a photographer. Classic Thai ghost story that plays a part as part of the world culture as well. But here they recognize the influence of ghosts, whereas in the West, I'm not sure that we do all the time. And I think ghosts play more of a part in our culture than we realize. And ghosts are resident in family lines, in ancestral lines, creating havoc for generations of people. And also, I think many disasters are related to ghosts, and many accidents are related to ghosts in the West as well, particularly car accidents. There'll be spots where too many people have an accident for it to be normal.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That would be considered to be the effect of ghosts, because we do not understand how they can manipulate our lives. It only takes that long for you to lose control of a car. And that's how they use ghosts here, to curse people and kill them. There's ways to enchant a steering wheel whereby it can just pull out of your hands and things like that, So if you look at the magic compared to what's in the culture, I think ghosts play a bigger role in all parts of life and influences, because ancestral ghosts as well play a huge role within some people's lives. incredibly destructive, and they don't even know where it's coming from. Ghosts attach. Like we have a visitor here at the moment, and had basically it's coming over tomorrow, I think, to try and sort out attachments.
Okay.
Yeah, because anybody who's had an abortion can have an attachment. And that's the man as well. That's the parents can have an attachment. And we need to know how to get rid of those things. Yeah? And because they can suck away all your good fortune and basically act as a hindrance on life to feed itself. Yeah? There's magic here to remove the problems of war. Because you've killed people. You kill people, those people might stick to you forever and go down the family line. Some families, if you look at their history, appear to be cursed. Whereas here, that would be viewed as something to investigate because you might have a ghost attachment. So the prevalence of ghosts not only lies within the stories and the famous ghosts, it lies within ourselves and the effect that these things can have on the lives of the living. Yeah? The famous ghosts here include Menak. There's been series on television. There must be at least 7 films made about Menak, and even a musical, which I've never seen, but it sounds great.
Why not? Why not?
Days.
I love it. That's awesome.
I want to see the musical of Menak. Menak was a lady who died while pregnant, while her husband was away fighting in a war. And when he came back, he did not realize that she was a ghost. And the villagers who tried to warn him met very, very sudden violent deaths. And then there was a huge battle between Somdet Tor and this very violent ghost to kind of control her, which he did by cutting the third eye piece of her skull and tying it on his belt. This is a high monk. Where that occurred, there is a shrine to Menak now in a temple called Wat Mahaput near to Onnut BTS SkyTrain station. Yeah? You can visit her. And that shrine emanates, shall we say. It's a very potent shrine. And people go there to request help with lovers, and of course, because,
right.
She died before they had completed their love. And there's so many versions of the story as well. It just never stops changing, this story. Changes with the telling. It's truly within the culture. And if people visit Bangkok, they should go to see the Shrine of Menak and behave, because the ladies who work at that shrine are probably as scary as the ghost itself. Don't mess around with the ladies at Menak. Yeah? Okay. There's other famous ghost shrines. There's many famous ghost shrines, but there's also another one in Bangkok for Meniyom. Now, Meniyom died during the Second World War.
Recent.
And they stored her body at the temple because there was no time to cremate. It was just chaos, it was war.
Right.
And like 15 years later, they thought we should kind of get around to cremating all the bodies. That it must have really smelled really bad. And when they opened the coffin of Menak, she hadn't decomposed.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, she just desiccated. Now, that here is considered to be only occur with people of a very high spirituality, like an arahant monk, things like that, people like that. So they realized that her spiritual worth and her merit was of such a level that her body had remained intact. So they built a shrine to her and propped her in a corner of the temple grounds, where she used to help people with lottery numbers.
Okay.
Of course, yeah.
Right on, right.
And she's still there.
That's right.
And that's 100 meters away from a SkyTrain station on the other side of the river in Tonbury. And you can go and visit her and make a request and take her some flowers and light some incense and ask for something and promise to return with something to give her if she helps you with that aspect. And like most of the ghost shrines at the moment, they're down a bit. The popularity is down.
Okay.
But it only takes one event that becomes national news and the place will be like a spiritual circus in seconds. Yeah. The focus of these popularity stakes, it's just like a fashion, really. Different things become popular at different times.
And if that doesn't do it, then just make another musical and Robert's your father's brother.
And I'll be in it anytime.
Now, folks, unfortunately, listening to this podcast cannot see you. As this is not a visual podcast, but I'm going to talk about two things that I can see from looking at you, Peter Jenx, right now. The very first thing is a very beautiful amulet that you are wearing around your neck. So something which you offer on your website are these extremely elaborate and beautiful amulets. For many people, spirit houses and amulets are all they know about Thai magic. Why are amulets so central to Thai magical belief?
Nowadays, I think this changes all the time. It changes, the role of amulets change with the changes within society and within ourselves. Yeah, they are developed and used by people with different understanding of life with each generation, in my opinion. Currently, I would say amulets are popular, particularly in the West, because they provide, in general, they provide magic to the lives of the people. Now, this can be to a certain level whereby we can become related to a magician themselves. We are not a full magician. We don't have the talent, haven't done the studying, but we can use magic, which I think, particularly in these very strange times, is quite important to do so. It gives a sense of independence from the world, and I think we need that detachment from the world at this time. It also gives us a chance to have an excuse to build our samadhi, as we were talking about earlier, because each item comes with a kata and a system of praise. And I think we're missing that in our culture. I think we're missing sacred words. We're missing sacred actions. But we have to understand that these sacred words are coming from a culture where nothingness is king.
Right.
So one of the things people generally ask is, what does that kata mean? And I have to say, you don't need to know that. That will get in the way of you saying sacred words. Now, for me, this is where the advantage is. This is of a different culture, because that is easier to accept. If it's of a Western culture, we have too much almost, we have a different relationship to words if we know the language. Yeah. With this, it's just sounds. And yes, they all have a meaning, which we should only learn by accident over time, because the meaning is not essential for the magic at the level that we want to have magic at. So, first of all, I think having magic within our lives at this time can separate us from the effects of the world particularly during this decade, because it's a bit heavy this decade astrologically, and it's not going to get better anytime soon.
Yeah. Howdy.
Yeah. It's like this the whole decade. It started with COVID. Yeah. I mean, that's not the best introduction to the 2020s, is it really?
No.
And I think one of the reasons for the rise in magic is to be able to have the independence away from what we would consider as normal life. Right. Yeah. Because normal life at the moment is too stressful now. We're too far away from where we should be to cope with the future, because the future has to be more natural than what it is now. Yeah? Yeah. Returning to a form of spirituality without recognizing it as a form of spirituality and therefore giving it labels. You have to remove all the labels, and the best way to do that for me has been to do it through something so foreign we don't understand it, to instill magic and wonder, because that is a childlike action that can act as a refuge from the shit that's being dumped on us all at this time.
Hear, hear. Certainly.
And I didn't know I was going to say any of that. It just came out.
I love it. And it was very well put.
I think some of the emails I get are very disturbing, to be frank.
Likewise.
Yeah? And unpleasant to read. And it doesn't make me, I have to control it. I have to get it into a place where I can deal with the person. It doesn't make me angry at them per se. It just makes me want to help them control what they are giving to other people. Because toxicity comes in many forms. And none of us deserve toxicity within us or to be given it by other people. None of us. Yeah. That is where magic for me can come as the best refuge at this time, because it produces the independence that we need to exist in this world and the barrier we need between ourselves and everything else.
I love it. That's great.
I've never explained it in that way before, but that's how I feel today. Yeah. I just don't, it upsets me to read the states of mind that people have at this time. And it's so obvious when you actually have escaped a lot of that, or some of it, yeah, to then when you see these terrible examples of where people are, to be frank, and it just makes me want to help them, but I can't at the same time accept what they're giving to me. I have to cover it, stop it as soon as I can, because nobody deserves that. And they don't deserve to give it either. They don't deserve to have that within themselves. And I think one of the ways out of this world is not to take part in it on their terms. We have to become independent of everything, I believe, to get through this decade.
Yeah. The amulet that you're wearing is one of the ones that was produced by an ajarn, most certainly in Thailand. You talked about this sense of wonder that the magic of Thailand gives you. That this is where a lot of your independence comes from. But just the fact that you learn about this magic and you approach it with a childlike way of approaching it, because it's foreign to you. It's foreign to everything you've grown with. But yeah, the amulets themselves, they they're so elaborately crafted. Are you there when they're being, at least the ones that you're selling on your website, are you there when they're being crafted? Are you taking part in all of it? Is it part of your process? Is it part of your magical paradigm? Like, is it something that you do that helps you as well?
Because I'm a foreigner, I can, at the moment, everything has to change. This decade is a decade of change. Every structure of power and understanding, both of ourselves, countrywide and worldwide, will change this decade. Yeah? My foreign nature is still an advantage to me at this time, because I can think outside the box of what the Thai ajarns understand. Yeah. So at the moment, I work ahead 6 months because I have stopped buying anything that is produced for the general market.
Okay.
It's not changing enough. It's too traditional. And we need, while the magic has to remain traditional, it doesn't have to look the same. It doesn't have to provide the same things. These are just functions of delivery. Yeah. And I'd like to change from FedEx to DHL, if you know what I mean. Yeah.
Right.
So, like, looking at this amulet around my neck, this is the test amulet that I asked to be made to test the idea of the magic. Yeah? It's by Ajahn Dui. And he came upon some incredibly potent remains. I'm not going to... I don't have to tell you about the remains, but basically it's a tutor-crutz, which are rolled pieces of metal, with the remains of a child and the mother that died in terrible circumstances. And he was given the remains by the families, basically, to earn merit for their spirits. So we was like, what do we do to make this in a way that people worldwide might appreciate, might want to pay ajarn to construct, because all these are constructed individually, one at a time, as part of changing the system to bespoke magic. This is rough as you like. Yeah, it's, Ajahn doesn't live in the cities. This guy is way outside. Fantastic magician, very traditional, young as well, and thought it best to tie these spirits to me only. Yeah, so my name and birthday and the blessing is within the amulet itself and scripted as part of the spell. So I'm used to amulets. I've had thousands through my hands, which is been a fantastic education, to be honest. I can access them immediately, the ghosts. Now, because of that, you can work with them directly. Now, we all have different ways to do that, and we have to understand the best way for us to be able to work with something. I love ghosts. I've loved ghosts since I was born. Yeah. And I enjoy ghosts. We are friends and we get on as long as they don't overstep the line, in which case we won't get on. Yeah. And it's within my astrology to be able to work with ghosts very well. But what I do instead, I don't do begging, Douglas. I don't get involved with anything like that. Oh, please help me with this. If I want help with something, I'll help myself, and I'll find a way of supporting myself and getting on with life in the best way possible. So what I do is praise these ghosts and help them. And then if they see something I need in my life, they will help me. But each person has to work out how to work with these things. And that only happens with experience and should develop over time. This is not the Thai way. You'll be asked and you'll be promised something, and it's like a business transaction. My life's great already, thank you very much. Yeah. I don't need to ask for stuff. What I do need is the support and help of mutual support and help that we can live together. Yeah? So I cherish this because, and I give it merit as often as I possibly can. Now, if you consider that as an action, what it means basically is that I go around each day and I will be doing deliberate acts of kindness and giving the merit to these two spirits. Now, just imagine a world if we're all going around doing deliberate acts of random kindness. And this can be something as simple as popping a few dollars in a collection box at a temple, to deliberately making the decision to help somebody with something. It might only be small, might be big, whatever. At the moment, I'm clearing out all the old ideas of amulets I have, yeah, which is a few boxes of amulets, and I'm giving them away with the series of books I've just printed. So in effect, they're receiving an amulet that is often more valuable than the book for free. Yeah. Okay? Over the whole enterprise of doing these books, I will still make a profit. But the act of giving an amulet, if that amulet is useful for the person I give it to, if it benefits their lives, I get merit. So I will be able to help my ghosts more and have a different relationship to life. So if we all consider the act of merit, if we think about it and actually remember sometimes to be kind, that can change the world in itself.
I want everybody to re-listen to that with the idea of merit in their head and just listen once more to everything that Peter just said there, because merit is one of those things that is essential to understanding time magic. It's one of the things where I believe you talked about it somewhere else, but when I finally got my head around it, it was like, this is the thing that I think is missing in a lot of what we can call Western magic, is this idea of merit. And it's so simple and beautiful, and it just is something that we should all be doing. It's fantastic. So please,
random
everybody,
acts of kindness, man. Random acts of kindness.
I know, right?
Changes life around you like random acts of deliberate kindness. And, in Thailand, it's considered in a very business-like way. I do this for this. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. It's still a choice of kindness. It doesn't matter if you're doing it for something else. I think every day we should go out and do one act of kindness just for the look of the person you do it for, understanding that you have just been kind. If they don't understand it and not in a position to understand being kind, that you've just been kind, it doesn't matter to you. You've just been kind. It will come to them at some other point. Yeah? And absolutely. As a currency, way better than the dollar.
Yep. Especially these days, I have to say, at least the Canadian dollar. I have one final question for you here, Peter.
Sure.
for somebody who's been in Thailand, been visiting since 1991, 1992, that's quite a while ago. Do you think that magic will become less and less important to Thailand as the country moves forward to the future? Or are magic and Thailand holding hands for centuries more?
It depends what the future holds. Yeah, magic, it will always be here as long as people need it. And as long as the ajarns are trained correctly. Too much information is now currently online, but there are still magicians being trained correctly that have the necessary abilities to produce good magic. And I can see them being held up by society already, even though, people in their 20s and 30s, are being held up as an example of a good magician, even at that age. There are less monks now, performing like good magic because of the change in the Buddhist architecture and structure, basically. They're trying to remove magic. But it only takes one event and it'll be back.
Yeah.
If war comes to Asia, and it's predicted, instantly you will see a change in the attitude and the demand for magic change. You have to consider that magic is only generally used by the poor and the rich, because in effect, both positions are the most precarious.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And the problem now is that most people are middle class. It won't take much for that to change. And with that, you will get a change for the demand of magic. I already have plans for when that changes and what to do. If violence takes hold, I have already got plans to get Ajahn Dewey on television in my head, because he specializes in ancient Kongkrapan magic as Sakyan, as tattoos. Kongkrapan is invincibility of the body. And it is actually best as a tattoo, more so than as an amulet, because it is within your body. The body of the tattoo is within your physical body. The Thais tend to have tattoos, Sakyan tattoos, magical tattoos, and a few amulets, whereas foreigners tend to have a lot of amulets and no tattoos, because it's difficult to get here and fill your body up. Yeah. And I'm somewhere in between. I try not to have too many amulets, but I've got a shitload of tattoos. Yeah, that's the classifier for tattoos. That's Sakyan, by the way, shitloads. So I think this decade is very important for magic, because everything's going to change dramatically. We perceive that magic will be needed to help the people through those changes. Because at the end of the day, it serves the people, it serves the society, and we need that to hold true. As soon as if things get violent, all the army, all the police will be having tattoos. Guarantee it. Yeah, there'll be queues for it. Yeah. If the economy goes, everybody will be looking for the most potent possible good fortune amulets. Yeah. And let's not forget that the original good fortune amulets meant you will have enough to eat, not be a millionaire. All that needs to change. Yeah, our perceptions have become completely skewed this last 25 years, in particular, 30 years. And there's a correction is needed. And we have to understand what that correction will do for us, how we will achieve it, and what magical help we will need to get through it. And at the moment, there is a particular focus on the worst readings of the astrology. It's like there's a competition as to who can make it the shittest.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, there is. Yep.
It is never, ever turns out the way you expect it to, but it will turn out to be correct. Yeah, but it's never
magic.
It never is the way we think it's going to exactly work out. And don't forget, astrology is the influence. It depends on you as to whether you take up that influence. Yeah, we do a lot of readings for people with Ajahn Apichai, who's very good at it. And say, like, everyone's got a lot of Saturn at the moment, or everyone's got a lot of Rahu at the moment affecting them. And I'd say to people, look, Ajahn, in Thailand, we do readings from birthday to birthday. What's going to affect you this year? What adjustments do you need to make in your life? How are you going to avoid the effects of the astrological influences? Because we don't need to fall under their power to the degree that we would if we didn't know what was going to happen. If we have an understanding, we can find ways to avoid the worst of the problems. If we do that, there's a chance that it will not be as bad as what we think it is.
Yeah. I, for one, have had such an enormously fun time.
Been great.
Going through your work, Peter, and just looking at the photographs and just seeing it all, and to have the experience to talk to you. It has been one of those things where I knew so little about it, and it was so utterly fascinating in every regard. And I would love to just know as much about it as possible, because Thailand seems like one of those places where, well, I don't want this to sound soppy, but it's like almost a magician's paradise. It's a place where magic is so alive that one can see that corrective that a lot of places in the world truly need to be like. A lot of places need to have this.
I think it's here for that influence. Yeah. And the third book in the series, Ajahn Apichai, is giving advice on magic itself and how he works with it and what to expect from it, what to avoid, what to encourage, stuff like that. And the most important, I think that I was just thinking then that over this period where we've done all this work, the relationship to the magic itself has changed quite dramatically. Yeah. And I want to see where we are and what we understand with our relationship to magic after the next 5 or 6 years, because it's not going to be where we are now. I think there's much. I don't know whether it's a book. I'm a bit tired of doing books. I've done a lot of work this last 6 or 8 years.
These are not small books.
Yeah.
These are not small. This is not something you just go to the New Age store and it's there. It's like, oh, these are
it'll be there as a doorstop. You know what I mean?
Yeah, these are serious objects. They're serious stuff.
But I think there's the rest of this decade. I think what it's going to be useful for is a better understanding of what it is. Yeah. And my only other plan at this time is to do a book in about 6 years about how magic changes to meet tumultuous times. And because I think we need to understand that, and through that understanding, we will have a completely different view of the magic itself. Because, looking at how our knowledge has changed and developed, particularly over this last 2 to 3 years, what we're going to know in 2030 is going to be nothing like what we know now.
Yeah.
So it's worth sticking around for.
For sure. And here's the thing. People have 6 years to read these books that you've written, that you've created for us, to be able to get to that book that's going to come out in 2030. So for people that don't know, where can people find these books? Where can people find your work, Peter? Where can people grab some amulets if they need to? Like, please let the listeners know all of the things that's happening and where to get them.
Well, first of all, this next 6 years is going to be a time for us to change completely. And change is always good if we view change in the correct manner. Yeah, it is a process of learning. Thai Occult 1 has been reissued by Miskatonic Books in the US.
Yep.
And in a hardback, and they've really done a very beautiful job. And they were brave enough to try and edit it as well. God bless them for that, because that book, it was rough, shall we say. And that's Miskatonic Books can be found online. All the other books, Thai Occult 2, Thai Occult 3, Thai Occult Sak Yan, and there's one more to come, which is a book we wrote again during the COVID time about our relationship to supernatural places. That's going to come out. That's going to get printed. That'll be finished printing in about a month and a bit.
Wow.
It was never been released before. It was only available as a PDF. I wrote it just for the fact I wanted to travel around, going to all my favorite places that I wanted to visit.
Best way to write a book.
So I did a book about it, and about the importance of supernatural locations as well. All those books I've printed at a Bible publisher's in Chiang Mai, which makes me giggle. Yeah,
there you go.
But they've done a very good job. They've all got lovely ribbons in them. They're all hardback, and I've done runs of either 99 or 199, and that's it. And these are all the last printings of these books, and all of them are available at the same time. So after that, it will only be PDFs. So if you actually want a physical copy, now's the time. And the books and the amulets are available at thethaioccult.com. All one word, THETHAIOCCULT.com. Easy to find. And it's a bit of a journey once you get in there.
It is. I have to say, I was just about to say, I think I spent like 2 hours looking at all of the amulets on. I was just so fascinated by them. There's lovely pictures there, and they each have the little story. It's fantastic. Yeah, everybody, thethaioccult.com, all one word. You can find everything that Peter's got up there. And I have to say, the reputation of the books precede them, and they're just so good. It's not often that you will see something so unique, and these books are that. From what I've had a chance to read, they are fantastic books, and just
we are
some
lucky.
of the best.
We are all of us are very lucky that the magicians in this country opened their door for us to gain an understanding of what they know. And what they know is profound. And we are very, very lucky to have the chance to read their words.
Definitely. Everybody, please find Peter's work, grab as much of it as you can. You had better believe that I'm going to have all of the links for where to find Peter's work online, particularly those 2-3 books, The Thai Occult 1, 2, and 3, as well as where to get the amulets that Peter is selling, and he can ship it to you worldwide. All of those links are going to be available at whatmagicisthis.com. And I just want to really make a point about Peter's books. The Thai Occult 1, the Thai Occult 2, the Thai Occult 3, the hardcover editions of those that are available and soon to be available, and you can buy them. Once those are out, they're gone. That's it. They're done. So if you don't grab a copy of it right away, if what we have talked about this entire show is interesting to you and you're like, man, I want to know more about this, you have to get Peter's books and you have to get on it real quick, because when they're gone, they're gone. No reissue. And trust me, these are great books. So I will have links to all of those things at whatmagicisthis.com. Also on whatmagicisthis.com, there will be, of course, some show notes for this episode. Not a ton of them, because most of the interesting links and things to look up, those are kept mainly in Thailand. And what Peter has is a very behind the scenes understanding and look at what's going on there. This stuff isn't in books. This is a very oral tradition. This is the stuff that is done from teacher to student, from monk to ajarn. This is hard to find information, and Peter has done such a great job. So truly, all of the things you need to know are in Peter's books. So again, very important. If you want to learn more, you have to grab Peter's stuff. So there'll be some show notes, not a ton of them there. Do you like what I'm doing at What Magic Is This, and you'd like to support me in some way? Well, there are 3 ways of doing that. Let's go through every single one of them. The first way is the absolute best way of supporting me, and that is through Patreon. That is patreon.com/whatmagicisthis, or head to whatmagicisthis.com. Click any number of the Patreon links there. There's tons of them. I've littered them all over the place. The cost is only a bit of your time, and $7 American a month, because I have to eat. This is my job. This is my career. This is what I do with my life. I wake up in the morning and I work on my podcast, and I do the Patreon stuff, and I do the main podcast stuff. I do researching. I do absolutely everything. So $7 a month through the Patreon. There's one tier. That's it. It gives you access to all kinds of things, and it keeps me alive, and it keeps me going and producing this show. So the best way of supporting me is, as I've said, through Patreon. I have episodes about all sorts of things. I do episodes about certain entities. I have videos about how to create your own incense and do fire cleanses. I have all sorts of offerings there. It's just an absolute tidal wave, an avalanche, a volcano, a tornado, a other natural disaster. Just there's so much stuff that I put out, and it's all unique. It's basically another podcast, and it's there on the Patreon. So as much as you like this podcast, trust me, my best stuff is on the Patreon. I just released an episode about my trip to Scotland recently in June, and how it got me thinking about the early modern witch persecutions that occurred in Scotland, and the kind of ideas and feelings that it left me with. And it's an hour and a half show. That's 90 minutes. That's basically a movie. And I just did that right on the Patreon. And it's one of my favorite things that I've done. I really enjoyed doing it. In fact, here's a little clip of it. I'll just give you a little taste, a little sample. Yeah, an hour and a half of this. So if you like What Magic Is This, there's way more on the Patreon. Here, have a listen to this one. But indeed, the Scottish Reformation was a huge event, and what occurred within those who were of the elite level in Scottish society in and around this time was this idea, this insidious idea in some ways that we're still dealing with to this day, and perhaps I'll swing back to talking about this in later on in this episode. But there's this idea of striving to create a godly society, a godly state, like a God-fearing, God-loving, every aspect of the society itself is controlled by the Protestant ideas. And it seems that while other places in Europe, usually larger landmass areas, were trying to do the same kind of thing, it's in Scotland where the institutions were run by people that held this idea to be a truism, that they became more intrusive in the institutions that were more authoritative. That would be the church and the government itself. And this is one of the major reasons why this idea of creating a truly God central focused state is indeed one of the major reasons that we can point at and say that this is why Scotland was a bit more. And it's not to go back to how I began this small little segment. It wasn't so much that, that the Calvinist view on women and their role in lasciviousness and wickedness in sin was why the persecutions, but it was more so the fact that the Scottish obsession, the Protestant Scottish obsession with creating a godly society, just turned that dial up a little bit more than other places. So the residual symptoms of that are certainly manifested in the witchcraft persecutions in Scotland. So along with that, what you do have is this belief in a godly state being held by people in authority, and then that certainly drifts into the courts and the people doing the persecutions. What's more, you have this other level of society within Scotland, the ones with the folk beliefs, or quotes, the peasant belief of who could be a witch and who's doing what. And then that gets pushed through, and once that baton gets passed off to the courts, what occurs there is different in Scotland than it is elsewhere. Well, there you go. So that's just a small little sample, and trust me, that show goes in some very interesting directions, and it just makes me feel about how these kind of persecutions happen on we like to blame society. It's the societies and the beliefs of people, there, and that's what causes these persecutions. And then over this 400-year period of time, that's what was. But I think there's an individual thing that occurs within us that we need to look at and we need to examine, and that's what the witchcraft and witch persecutions from the 15th century to the 18th century. That's kind of, where I think we need to take a look at them, and everybody needs to take a look at these witch persecutions that occurred. So it's an hour and a half episode, and it's one of my best things. I truly believe that. So if you want that and access to a Discord server and choosing what gets on this podcast, again, this episode was chosen by the Patreon supporters. I put up about 14 topics, and the top 8 they get on the show. The other 6 they go into a little cupboard, and I keep them there and just let them marinate for a little bit, and then I'll try them again on a poll a little bit later on, and hopefully people will pick them. But you get to see what stuff gets on this show, as well as what kind of offerings or content that I do on the Patreon. You get to vote on that kind of stuff. I run the polls every month, and the Patreon is just a wonderful, totally unique thing. And there's one tier, it's $7. That's so cheap. That's nothing. So I would really like to see your support there. Again, patreon.com/whatmagicisthis, or head to whatmagicisthis.com, $7 a month. That is the best way of supporting me. I've had a few people that have done this recently, and I want to say thank you to each and every one of you that have donated through PayPal. PayPal is another way of supporting me. So basically, if you want to send me $5, $10, $20, $2,000, any amount, head to whatmagicisthis.com, click on any number of the PayPal buttons there. There's so many of them. And you can send me a small chunk of change. That keeps the hamster on the wheel. That keeps the logs on the fire. It keeps the wind in my sails. Yeah, there we go. That's a good one. I haven't done that one. Yeah, I'm looking out my window and I look at a harbor. So I'm like, I'm trying to think of things to say in these outros to make them kind of unique, each and every one, so that maybe people will listen all the way through and they'll be, persuaded to help me financially somehow. So yes, if you donate through the PayPal, any amount of money, hopefully in the dollars category, less in the cents. I'll take cents. But as long as there's a dollar before it. Just kidding. I'll take anything at this point. Although it's a bit of a waste of your money if you're going to give me like 75 cents. American, which is about $14 Canadian. Just kidding. It's not that bad yet, but it might be soon. We pay $8 for butter up here. $8 for butter. It's crazy. Anyways, PayPal, please. Any amount just goes right back into making this podcast run. Everything is done on subscription and monthly subscription service as far as the editing software I use, the hosting, the website hosting, the recording software, the editing software, the plugins I use for that editing software. It's costing me about $200 a month. And if you donate through the PayPal, that kind of makes that number get a little bit smaller. It just helps. So I would love for you to be able to be part of keeping this podcast ad-free. And best way of doing that is supporting me either through Patreon or through the PayPal. The third way of supporting me is not a great way of financially supporting, but showing your support by grabbing some merchandise. Head to whatmagicisthis.com, click on the merch button there. Then you can grab some t-shirts, tote bags, fridge magnets, stickers, tote bags, wall hanging things. They're all there. Mugs. I love my mugs. They're great. And I use them every day. Truly, I am my best customer. But what I want to say is that they have these wonderful logos that I do, these wonderful designed little circular, usually logos, and they're all wonderful. I guarantee you, if you go, just even if you've never looked, just go and have a look. Go to whatmagicisthis.com and look at some of the logos. They're pretty dope. They're pretty cool. I'm sure there's at least one of them that you'd like. So if you just want to grab some stickers, that'd be really cool. But a t-shirt's great. A hoodie's even better. Kids onesies, fantastic. Don't forget the What Magic Is This catheter? I'm joking. I don't have a catheter. That would be gross. Or would it? It could save your life, you know. Catheters do save lives. Truly. Yes, this has got very weird. Don't know why I said that. Gonna just change gears here and talk about something else, but still talking about the merchandise. Anyways, t-shirts, hoodies, all that stuff. If you do buy one, I don't see a lot of money from them, but I love seeing people wearing them. If you do grab some merchandise, please take a picture, send it to me. I love seeing them. It's so crazy to me that people are wearing stuff that I've designed or other people have designed that have the name of my show on there. It's so cool. It's fantastic. But I don't see a ton of money from it, but I would love if you wanted to grab some stuff, please let me know and send me a picture because it's really, really cool. But again, and finally, the best way of supporting what I do to keep this as my job so I don't have to find another job or I don't have to put ads on this thing is to support me through the Patreon. We have about 380 Patreon supporters right now. I know if you go to patreon.com, you're like, oh, Doug's got 800 supporters. I don't. Half of those, more than half of the people supporting are supporting me free, which means they don't get the offerings or the content, but they're just like following along in case I have an update or something on there. But eventually I'm hoping a lot of them are going to try and support me financially. So yeah, I've about 380 supporters right now. I'd love to make it to 400. It'd be great. Nice round number, 400. That'd be fantastic. So if you can see your way to supporting me through Patreon, that would be great. Patreon.com/whatmagicisthis. But all of these things can be found at the website. That is whatmagicisthis.com. All one word. We'll see you there. Take a look. Peter, this has been a journey. It's been a journey since you wrote me that very first email. I was supposed to write you. You wrote me first. So ever since
knew
then,
you were looking. You see, Douglas.
Yeah, of course, you must have. You must have. But it's just been such a pleasure to go through this work and to just learn as much as I have. And this episode has merely scratched the surface. I would truly hope, Peter, if we were to ask you to come back on the show, you'd let us know a little bit more about your journey and more about all of the things you've seen and all you've learned, because it's so wonderful.
It would be a pleasure any time, Douglas.
Oh, fantastic. Everybody, that is an introduction, a very shallow, albeit deep and wide discussion about just this incredible part of the world and the spiritual ecosystem that they have there that is so unique and so wonderful. That is Thailand, the land of smiles. I just love that. When I read that for the first time, that Thailand is known as the land of smiles, is like, there's no better way to put it. But that's a place that I think everybody should at least go there once that loves this stuff. I'm going to try my best. Anyhow, everybody, for myself and from Peter, thank you so much for tuning in and listening to the podcast.
Thank you very much indeed.
Yes, we'll catch you on the next one. Everybody stay healthy, stay hopeful, and stay luminous. Until next time, ta-ta for now, everybody. Bye-bye.